Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. My name is Dennis. I'm co-organizer along with Rich Schwerin. Today we have Mike Ensing, founder and CEO of Revere. And Mike is going to be talking about LLMs and agents, key implications for marketers as we move beyond search. LLMs are now the big influencers of brand views, product opinions, purchase decisions, and the customer journey. Mike will discuss this disruption, the implications for brands, and the key actions marketers should be taking to measure, monitor, and optimize for LLMs and the new LLM-based customer experience. Mike, thanks for joining and take it away.
Thanks, Dennis, and great to see everybody. Thanks for joining. Just as a way of introduction, I'm Mike Ensing, founder and CEO of Revere. We are a 18-month-old startup and actually very focused on helping brands and marketers address the massive disruption that LLMs are having on search, and actually help brands measure, monitor, and optimize their presence on LLMs, and then also soon to be agents. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through sort of the disruption, where we're at. I'm going to talk about two components of the disruption. One is LLMs, and the next chapter, which is agents. And then talk about what marketers and brands should be focused on. If there are questions during the conversation, that's fine too. I'll try to take things in the chat too. But then we'll have about 10, 15 minutes for discussion afterwards. Can everybody see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just quick agenda. I'm going to talk about the search disruption. I'm going to talk about both the age of answers, and that's sort of the age that we're living in with LLMs, and then the age of agents, and then talk about key actions. Just, four big takeaways from this whole thing. One is this train of search disruption is moving really, really fast. Two is we're only in the first chapter. We have LLMs disrupting search and the whole brand experience today. We're going to have agents actually doing that tomorrow. Third is brands and marketers need to get on this now. And then we'll also talk about, okay, what focus areas should they utilize when actually basically addressing this disruption. There's huge opportunity, but there's huge challenges as well. And the dollars at stake for brands are just immense. Okay, so just a little bit of background. And actually, I came out with a posting about 18 months ago, basically saying LLMs are going to be the next big influencers of our time. And people thought I was a little bit nuts. What's happened is this disruption has just really, really taken hold. I said that basically LLMs will impact the brand views of 3 billion people in 3 years. I was actually wrong. It's happening faster, and I'm going to take you through that a bit. But the world has changed for marketers. For 25 years, marketers had to really deal with one big platform, and that is Google. But with the whole birth of generative AI and large language models, LLMs, that has changed entirely. And now there's an entirely new landscape that is actually impacting brand views of billions of people that marketers need to actually address. And I know this is a very complicated slide, sort of designed on that by nature, just because it is a very, very complex environment. But what we have happening today is that you have all these foundational LLMs like GPT-4o, Gemini, Llama, Claude, DeepSeek actually entering the scene about 4 weeks ago. And they are actually informing all these different channels that actually have customer touch points. So everybody knows about ChatGPT. Everybody knows about Claude. Amazon has Ask Rufus. Apple Intelligence, they're actually baking generative AI and LLMs into their whole operating system. There's AI native search. So there's AI Overviews, Perplexity, Search GPT. You have all the big tech companies embedding generative AI and LLMs in their platforms. So like generative AI is now in Microsoft Word, and you can help write. There's also now LLM web-based browsers. There's OpenAI is coming out with NLLM. There's an open source browser use. A couple days ago, Amazon came out with Nova Act. And then finally, you have all these agents entering the scene. So the bottom line is that LLMs and their agents are going to be touching billions of people, actually influencing them multiple times a day. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. So just I'm going to talk about sort of the traction with the disruption. So some big data points. ChatGPT now is the 7th most popular website. 3.9 billion visits last February. Google has its aspirations high, 500 million users of Gemini. And even Amazon, they're embedding LLMs into Alexa. So you're going to have 600 million Alexa devices out there actually influencing consumers. Traffic is shifting now. Actually, the first data point on the left is actually ChatGPT versus Bing. And this is even last September, where ChatGPT actually has surpassed Bing in search traffic. Adobe actually just came out and basically say retail websites actually have a 1,200% bump from generative AI sources. What's really interesting about that is when generative AI like ChatGPT is a source of traffic, there's more engagement. There's more people are engaging with more pages and fewer bounces. So the interaction is much, much deeper, which suggests that folks are finding out a lot more about brands and products. User behavior is changing. It's shifting from Google to these generative AI platforms. Forrester just came out with a stat, 89% of B2B buyers use generative AI when actually looking for information. Tech Radar, 27% of respondents in the US use tools and AI tools instead of search. And then the Pew Research Center, it's interesting, they did a study of how people are using generative AI, and the number one use case is to do research or find information about a specific product. So people are going to these platforms to really understand about brands, products, and actually assist with their whole buying decision. This is sort of a fun case. This is a company called Viv, a feminine products company. This posted in Modern Retail in January, but they actually saw a traffic spike of 400%, and almost all that coming from ChatGPT and Google Gemini. One of the things that has been really interesting for Revere over the last 12 weeks or so is that we've seen a dramatic uptick in incomings and just basically dialogue on this whole discussion, because actually all brands, or not all brands, but most brands are now seeing organic traffic coming from ChatGPT. And they're saying to themselves, hey, my customers, both potential customers and current customers, are discovering about my brand and products on ChatGPT. I need to care passionately about how I'm represented on those platforms. All right. Another big thing that's happening is that we're actually transitioning from a world of SEO to a world of GEO or LLMO. There's lots of acronyms out there. Back in May of 2024, through an HBR piece that we did, we coined it LLMO. It's probably going to land at GEO. But actually in February of this year, I was just amazed by the stat, but it makes sense. IDC came out and said that companies are going to spend 5x more on basically LLM optimization than they will on SEO. So this is just it's just explosive. All right. Let me tell you actually why this is so tough and for marketers and how the environment has changed. For 25 years, we've been living in the age of search with Google, and we had one primary platform to deal with. Now we have multiple platforms, and you have all the foundational large language models. But then soon you're going to have thousands and hundreds of thousands of agents actually working on consumers' behalf. We had standard blue links, and we moved to actually synthesized answers. And what's interesting about those answers is they're different responses every time. So measuring brand presence on LLMs is difficult because of those different responses. The other thing going on is that LLMs are highly personalized in nature. So through our use, they're going to know everything about us, and actually they will tailor their answers accordingly, which is great for the end user because you get specific recommendations based on your needs, but it's more difficult for marketers. We're going from simple queries to personalized conversations that are multi-step, people diving down through 9, 10, 20 prompts to understand brands and products. Different business models are emerging. Basically Google had an ad-funded model. Who knows what's going to happen in the world of LLMs and agents? You're going to have subscription, you're going to have ad, and you'll have other emerging models as well. So marketers are going to have to actually track that and determine where they participate. And then the biggest challenge is we had robust analytics for for 2 decades, and now these LLMs are nearly black box. All right. But guess what? LLMs are the easy part. What's happening literally today is that agents are coming on the scene. And let me tell you, just talk a little bit about agents, define them, and then talk about the trajectory. So I define an agent as basically AI acting on behalf of the end customer, making decisions. So actually making a purchase decision. 2025 has been sort of coined the year of agents. I'd actually argue that we've had agents for a while. One big example of that is autonomous driving. Basically, agents are making decisions on the driver's behalf. One of the things that is interesting is one of the arguments I typically hear against agents is people won't trust them. Well, in autonomous driving, guess what? People are trusting these agents with their lives. So you're going to have agents actually doing purchase decisions and consumers trusting for purchase decisions. Just a little bit of data. There's some data from AI Agents Directory, the website's here, that tracks agents over time. So approximately there's 1,200 different agents. What's actually the key stat to look at, though, is the monthly growth, 36%. So it's just incredible, and this will actually go exponential for some reasons I'm going to describe. I'm sure most of you follow Jeremy Yang at Blitzscaling. He's sort of a leading thinker in this space. he believes, and I agree, that AI agents will revolutionize how we access information online. We may not have humans visiting websites anymore over the next couple decades. So it's going to fundamentally change marketing. Okay. Just a little bit more information about agents. I'm not sure how many people have been able to use OpenAI's first agent called Operator. I have access to it, and it's a pretty incredible experience. What happens is this agent actually opens up a web browser and does web searching on behalf of the user. And actually, there's several things to realize about agents is they actually work differently than LLMs. They actually have different models. So one of the big models behind this is GPT-4o Vision. It's a vision large model versus a language model. And actually, the way they work and the way you have to optimize them are going to be dramatically different. The other thing that's very, very interesting, and I just did this example of with an agent of book me a reservation at the best Indian restaurant in Bellevue, Washington, where I live. And it literally opened up a website, a web browser, went to Yelp, figured out, okay, what is the best Indian restaurant? And then actually makes an offer to make a reservation for me. What's interesting about this is that one of the things that agents require is accessibility to websites. And this particular function actually failed because this restaurant was not allowing agent access to the website. So they missed the reservation. So one of the things that you're going to hear me point out is marketers right now need to be managing accessibility to their websites by these LLMs and agents to be part of the representation. Okay. The other big shoe that has dropped around agents actually is in the last couple of weeks is OpenAI has actually released agent tools. And these are components that developers can utilize to build their own agents. And one of those is actually a web browsing tool. So that component can fit into any agent that developers are creating. And soon you will actually have these components driving hundreds of thousands of agents. Amazon has made a similar announcement with Nova. They also have an AI agent framework. Google has Vertex AI Builder. But one of the things that is going to be very, very important for brands and marketers is to understand and optimize how they're represented by these agents. But through these toolkits, the developments of agents will accelerate. All right. Let me talk about where brands should be focused. And at Revere, we believe that marketers in this world of LLM and agents should be focused on 5 different areas. One is measurement and monitoring. So really tracking how LLMs and agents are basically representing their brands. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Second thing is they should be doing content optimization. So GEO, LLMO, but really optimizing their end content with LLMs. There's going to be there's a time coming very, very quickly where data integration is going to matter. And a really good example of that is Perplexity. They've just launched a commerce platform. And as part of that, they actually have launched Merchant Center, which allows merchants and brands to actually directly link their product content into that platform. And so you'll see different LLM providers providing that more and more. And that's going to be another key consideration for marketers. Marketers are going to need to figure out how to participate in this new ecosystem. There's going to be ad-funded models. There's going to be other business models. And marketers basically need to track where the ecosystem is going and basically fit in. In terms of agents, the other thing that's going to happen is that there are going to be a lot of partnerships that develop. And a really good example of that is, OpenAI has a partnership with DoorDash, and that's part of the operator solution. And so I think in the world of agents, thinking about how to literally partner with agents is going to be very, very important for brands. And then lastly, in terms of representation and how LLMs portray brands, actually managing business practices is going to be very, very important. And one of the things that about LLMs is they're pretty darn accurate. And when an LLM is saying a brand has a particular weakness or even positive attribute, it's important that brands either leverage positive attributes or address weaknesses in their business operations. A lot of time, a content play is not going to actually fix that. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the differences between search LLMs and agents. And, again, we've been in the search world for 25 years, have had typical SEO. The big decision maker is the Google ranking algorithm. In the world of LLMs, the decision makers are different. They're actually LLMs themselves. They're actually pulling from a broader set of data. So they're pulling from training databases, they're pulling from web content, and they're going to start to pull from APIs. And the way to optimize for that is different. So there's several things that brands need to be considering. One is their scripts. And one of the things you'll hear me say is in terms of immediate activities for marketers, look at your scripts, look at robots.txt. Are you actually providing accessibility? And then there's also an emerging standard called LLMs.txt, which actually instructs the LLM on the best way to use your website. Content focused on user intent is really, really important. Structuring that content, your website performance, understanding sources. LLMs are using different sources. And then also eventually looking at API access. One of the leaders in this thinking is actually Rosemary on the call, and has been just been fantastic in this area. And then agents, this is all emerging, but it's going to be different as well. And API access is going to be very, very important. Partnerships is going to be very, very important. And it's going to be even a more complex set of decision makers around brand and product representation. Okay. One of the things that we believe at Revere is brands should be measuring and monitoring their products on LLMs. And there's a couple big reasons for that. One is understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are. And the optimization solutions are different depending on your brand representation. So some brands may have reach issues. They're not showing up in the models. Some brands may have sentiment issues where basically they're being poorly reflected. So actually measuring where you are and understanding how the LLM is representing your brand is a critical component to actually developing the optimization strategy. It's also important to understand representation across the LLMs because they have different behaviors. One of the things that we're seeing is really interesting is that GPT-4o is largely very, very positive about brands. Gemini and Claude, a bit more negative, more neutral than negative. So it's understanding that representation across LLMs is very important. It's also important to understand the sources that they use, and then also how your competitors are represented. And that informs basically your content strategy, your data strategy, your marketing strategy, and competitive strategy. At Revere, we actually have a product, brand Luminaire, that basically is being used by agencies today and customers. And what we do is we basically measure brand presence across all the LLMs, across a whole series of metrics. And we actually have one metric called the Revere Brand Index score. So we actually measure a LLM's propensity to recommend a brand or product. We also score, have the LLM score brands on core attributes, purchase criteria, so brands can understand how they're stacking up. We also provide competitive insights, and this is provided both through point-in-time analysis and monitoring as well across actually a broad array of LLMs. And then we're quickly moving into the agent space. Finally, what should brands be doing today in this new environment? First of all, measurement. And there's two components of that. One is looking at the traffic that is now coming from these LLM-based platforms. And then secondly is measuring brand and product representation to inform your content strategy. The second thing is plan and really dedicate resources to track this whole ecosystem. It is moving so quickly. And secondly, determine the best way to participate in this ecosystem. And there's lots of different ways that are going to emerge. And then finally is act. And one of the sort of most immediate activities is actually look at your accessibility through robots.txt, LLMs.txt. And then secondly is start to build that roadmap towards optimization. That was a lot.
So Mike, do you want to just step in here and tell the group what we've seen using the product?
That would be great. That would be great.
Yeah. So we've been using the product since January 1st with a client, a large financial software company. And so it's been really interesting because it's been able to give us a comparison of where we are in LLMs compared to our top competitors. So that's always something that everybody likes to see. But some of the biggest things we've seen with this product is it tells us, I'm looking at it in another screen, it gives us the positive and the negative attributes that are out there on the LLMs about my client's product. And when they saw it for the first time, of course, nobody likes to see negatives, but they immediately said, it's right. And so now they know what the salespeople have to talk about, what marketing has to write about, both from a positive and addressing negative information. The other thing that we've learned is that, you know, we're not selling to the world. And of course, the first score is, you know, is about everything that's out there. But when we started to filter it down into the personas that we were most interested in, our scores went way up. And that's actually what we wanted to see. We wanted to see how we were doing in those specific areas. So those are some of the things that have been awesome. And I was then asked to show it to the CEO, who just said, we have to share this at the SKO, because, you know, it gave another important insight. And so I think of this just like Google Analytics, that we now need Google Analytics for LLMs. So thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things we also do is we do sentiment analysis on basically how LLMs describe products and brands to end users. And it's really, really fascinating to see, okay, what are the drivers of that sentiment? And then actually from an optimization standpoint, actually address those issues.
And as you said, Mike, I've been floored at how different the results are across like 5 different LLMs that we're measuring, right? I mean, we have a score that goes from 26 in Gemini to 72 in Llama 3, right?
Yeah. And that's because of differences in reach and differences in sentiment as well. So I'd love to open it up to questions. Are there any questions on sort of this disruption, where it's going, impact of agents, or even the product brand Luminaire itself, or Revere?
Well, that's sort of a general question of what about synthetic data?
Just sort of being generated, or?
Well, if I generate a lot of negative data about my competitor and put that out there, is that going to be pulled up by your tool?
Well, if it's pulled up by the LLM, it will be pulled up by our product.
Right.
Yeah. So the question is it pulled up by the LLM? And go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking you really need a way to look at the authenticity of the data.
Yeah, the LLMs actually need to do that. And they, right now they're highly prioritized on authoritative sources. And one of the things that's interesting, like in the automotive segment, the authoritative sources like Car and Driver, Edmunds, and things like that are really a source.
Yeah.
The other thing that LLMs prioritize are sort of community-based content as well. That's highly credible. Like one of the big conversations is Reddit, and actually LLMs using Reddit. It's also very interesting to look at the license deals that LLMs are doing with information providers, because that's also going to dictate what they use in terms of forming their representations.
Yeah, I'm thinking the classic thing here is a fake alert extension on browsers for Amazon reviews.
Yeah.
But you need some way of detecting what's real and what's not.
Yes. Yep.
I just wanted to make a point, though, that back on one of your early slides, you had a thing about coding, and Gemini was not on there in coding, and they just introduced Gemini 2.5, and everybody's freaking out about how that's now the best thing for doing coding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although not my opinion.
It feels like there's a new LLM literally almost every week that
Yeah, at least
benchmark from last week, and Gemini, the new version has been great, but boy, there's certainly a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
But Craig, everything I read and it talks about how Claude is the best right now for coding.
Yeah, it was Claude 3.7 Sonnet, probably pretty much from last fall until recently.
There are a couple of questions maybe in the chat that says, wondering how we need to optimize our websites to be open to LLM searches. And I thought, Rosemary, since you posted the robots and LLMs thing, maybe you could talk about that.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, that was actually my question, because as someone who's who's not a tech guy, but is trying to make sure that I don't miss the wave of where 98% of our customers in the future are going to be coming from. How do we non-technical folks optimize our websites, not just for readability, but to be accessible to LLMs and all of these other searches on the horizon?
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm gonna can I take over share for 1 second?
Yep.
Okay.
Rosemary, I'm going to make you co-host so you can share.
Oh, okay, Mike, you can just,
Oh, you got it.
am I got it? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm just going to quickly run through some of these. So this is the document that you can download and review. And of course, it's going to take you time to go through previous content, but I think you have to start going back to optimize some of your very best blog posts. And there's things like that are SEO is still important, right? Because the search engine, because the LLMs use search data, right? So that means that things like the page titles, page structure, all of those things are still going to be really important. If you attended the last session I did in January, we talked about FAQ schema and how to have that both on page and in schema. And really writing in a conversational, authoritative tone is going to be what makes and helps makes that difference. Structure is really important to LLMs. That means, and it's almost just like SEO in a way. You still need headings and subheadings and bullets. Those are those structural pieces of a piece of content are also really important to how an LLM is going to ingest your content. Here's a whole little guide on how to do FAQs. I'm going to just show you, let me just see. So this is one thing that Mike was just talking about, and this is, everybody's probably familiar with a robots.txt file. So this is sort of the robots.txt file for LLMs.
Yep,
and you can
exactly.
use, yeah, so you can use my example, and this is just one file that we created full of links and information about what it can be found onto the web. We're waiting to see, it's still, LLMs are still like this big black box that SEO was. We still don't know if we make one change, whether that's going to impact it. So that's why you have to do all these things. And so doing things like, here's a post that we did on this very topic. And so you can see that having things like FAQs. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to answer the questions directly that people ask when they're looking for this topic. And so you probably know that a lot of blog posts and a lot of, service and solution pages, there's a lot of marketing jargon and a lot of marketing fluff, whatever you want to call it. But that's not what customers want. And someone asked in the chat about, let's see, I think it was why LLMs convert. Well, a big part of that is because when someone searches in Google, they're using 3 to 4 words in their search query. But when they go to, say, Perplexity, they're using 10 to 12 words. So when someone is searching for something that's, it's a full sentence, it's a full big question, and they come to your site, there's so much more, and they get the answer. They're so much more likely to convert than just, 4 words, right? So I have 2 really in-depth guides. One is, one sort of gives you the whole overview of where we are and how it compares to SEO. And the other really is about optimization. So if there's no more questions, I can turn it back over to Mike. And I see
Rosemary, I did have one comment. Are you going to put those links to these articles somewhere that we can have access to them? And the second thing is recently I read something that all LLMs use Wikipedia as a point
Yes.
of inclusion
Yep.
for like
Yep.
80% of LLMs. So, I mean, does that mean that assuming we can get these citations and make it able for us to have our own Wikipedia page, we should be running to do that?
So James, I'm so glad you asked that, because with Mike's tool, Revere, we learned that a lot of information was coming from Wikipedia, right? But my client doesn't have their own Wikipedia page. They're part of a much larger organization who has the Wikipedia page. And we aren't able to create their own standalone Wikipedia page for them. So
Yes.
that's kind of like a missed opportunity. So yes, if you think you have enough citations of high enough quality, absolutely go after a Wikipedia page, but it's not easy.
Oh, I figure I'm writing and marketing Christian books, and I figure we're a year away from that. But you think a year from now that will still be a gold standard to
Oh, totally. Yeah, I do. And I'm going to put these links right here for you.
Thank
But
you so much. You
yeah,
guys are absolutely amazing. I mean, I have taken some courses recently about how to design websites and things. And when I mentioned which is going to be more important a year from now, CEO or GEO, they were saying, "Oh, this AI thing is just a phase, and people are going to come back to Google." And I realized these are people that you just can't listen to because they don't know what they're talking about, and yet they're taking a lot of very naive marketers and leading them down to, one even said it's okay to start with the Wix page. And I just about, lost my mind when they said that. Yeah. So I'm so grateful that you guys are getting this type of information out to people who are willing to open their minds up and hear it, because you're making a profound contribution to what we want to do as marketers to be successful in the future. So thank you so much.
and I think it's going to take companies a year to really start changing. I'm seeing it with writers. They're just not making that switch yet. They're trying, but they don't, they've done content writing the old way for so long. This is a switch.
Yeah, I'm a writer, and I will tell you, I now do not understand how I lived 5 years ago without ChatGPT. I mean, it's just everything that I did 4 or 5 years ago is now 100% different because of AI. And I don't feel that it's replacing me as a writer. I feel like it's letting my writing just be, 1,000% more productive and creative and making me organized. And it's the future is here. And I'm just amazed at how many people have not figured out because they maybe they blinked for a year. I don't know, but the fact that they're not aware of what's going on right now is to their own detriment, and it's for our advantage for people who are, have their eyes wide open.
Yeah. One point, Rosemary, is I think companies that act today are going to have competitive advantage in terms of traffic, lead gen, brand representation. And I think the window is pretty small around that. I think that people who don't act in the next 6 months are going to start falling behind. This is going to move very quickly.
Is there a way for us to get on like an email list to whenever you have more of these presentations again, so we make sure we don't? Because had I not been watching on Meetup, I would not have been in here today.
Yeah, no, we can get you on an email list.
I appreciate that so much.
That's great. And then, for anybody who is interested in a deeper dive on the product and their brands, please follow up with me or Pat in terms of we'll get you a demo. The other thing that we do is we actually partner with agencies. This is a tremendous product that agencies can bring to their clients to basically identify the opportunity and challenge with brands, and then also set sort of the content roadmap and all the optimization activities that need to happen.
Mike, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Dennis. I was going to say there's a question in the chat that says, It's an interesting question. It's from Vicky, and I didn't see if she was still here, but it says a content optimization question. In the age of answers and agents, how do you help a brand figure out what the top Q&A content that is needed to optimize websites and schema markups? And it's a tough question because we've been used to doing that forever. So what's the new view? And I don't know if anyone has a strong view on that. I see Rosemary smiling, but I think I thought about that, and the immediate thing I went to is, boy, it's kind of a different game, right? Because we're not optimizing for keywords anymore, and the LLMs associate concepts, not exactly words. And so it's really more about what concepts are people searching for. I don't know if you had a better answer, Mike.
Actually, so one of the things that you can do is actually analyze all the customer forums and all the community sites and see what key discussions are being had and what concepts are out there. You can sort of base that prompts will be actually highly related to those discussion questions or discussion topics. Rosemary, did you have a view there too?
No, I think that was really good. I think that one of the things that I would suggest also is, so I've been training some salespeople on using Copilot, and one of the things I've been showing them is how you can use Copilot, or it can be other LLMs, to get sentiment analysis from reviews, right? And you list the review sites.
Yeah.
And then you get a sense of what are people talking about? What are they saying, right?
Yep.
I wanted to circle back with Bob. Bob, you had a hand raised before. Do you still have a question?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not over everybody's head, but most everything you talked about right now is inference level. We did talk about a little bit about Wikipedia, and in terms of training data, you've got a huge opportunity there for brands to affect their, sentiment analysis and things like that in training. What are your recommendations for how do you affect, or can you affect the training side of the whole thing?
Yeah. So the first thing to understand is what data are the LLMs training on, and secondly, also how often they refresh. And through the Luminaire product, we identify those data sources, and you can sort of get a prioritized list of, okay, where do you need to focus? The other thing that's interesting about LLMs is they have different refresh rates. So Gemini refreshes quicker than GPT-4o, but where everything's going very, very quickly is everything's going to be real-time based through these different search rags, so to speak. So actually, I lost you.
No, well, yeah, everything's going to go real time. You think the training of the LLM models is going to be real time?
No, but I think I think the response to any prompt is going to be real time, and I think these agents are going to also be real time, and I think it's just actually a matter of cost right now. But you have ChatGPT that invokes Search GPT whenever sort of real-time information is needed, and I think that's going to only increase in frequency. So I think you're going to get a hybrid view of answers, both from the training databases and then search-based answers as well.
Right. And the question really is, how do I affect that search base? I think there's a tremendous opportunity there, and maybe it's your company or not, to sell essentially training data to the models for training that they're stealing right now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
To be the the source, the one source of truth for training for brands to use this instead of just stealing my stuff.
Yeah.
And being able to offer that instead of having them just take it.
Yeah.
It's not, it's funny. I think about the training data the same way I think about the Google search indexing, right? I want them to grab my data because I want them to think about me the right way. It's the Gartners of the world or the Forresters or the industry analysts, right? That hate
that idea.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And frankly, I'll give all of my content about Revere out to the LLMs because I want to be in their foundation model. And then, so they have a good point of, a good take on me then, and then also in the search data, right? But it is important to be in both.
Because I'm just learning about all this, I'm curious, does Revere and Luminaire, are those for end users like me, or are they just for other, tech companies to sort of create their data for optimization?
No, it's for brands and
Okay.
companies to actually analyze their presence on the LLMs.
Gotcha.
It's also for agencies as well who are assisting their clients around this whole disruption.
Do you have some type of product for the ultimate end user that's trying to optimize my site to be seen by every LLM in the world?
Well, we can measure your site, and we can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I can't do that in reverse retrograde analysis of having access to that to make sure I'm seen by every place I can be seen.
We can measure that, but
Okay.
yeah. I'm happy to, James. I'm happy to have a deep dive conversation with you on it.
I just want a ground level dive of if you have a product that I can purchase for my business that's going to make me have a competitive edge in this radically changing world, sign me up.
Okay.
But if it's not intended for my level, then I understand.
No, I think it is. But
Mike, does your tool include improvement opportunities, or is it just telling you what's what?
Yeah, so great question, Tom. So we actually identified the key focus areas of opportunities. And we, in terms of like the how and the, so thank you, Rosemary. In terms of the how, we typically, right now we're partnering with agencies, but then we're also starting to build some things into our overall solution. But we will tell you, you need to focus on reach or sentiment with this large language model, actually against these personas, and really get pretty precise on where you have to focus. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And before we go, Frank has a question. I know we're just got a minute or two left. And he's had his hand up for a little while. Frank?
I think Frank just dropped.
It was just there. Okay.
Well, before we go, Mike, I had a quick question. Going back to James's question, does Revere provide any sort of freemium model or free trial for end users?
We can provide a free trial,
Okay.
and if folks would like that, please contact me. And there's different elements of the platform. So there's discovery, which is point in time analysis for any LLM that people can try. We typically set up monitoring, which is basically deep analysis across LLMs, competitors, and things like that. We usually do that on a paid basis. Anybody would like to, one, see the solution, and then two, a free trial, please reach out. I'm going to put my email in the chat.
And Frank is back, and he still has his question. So
yeah, thanks so much. I'll make it really quick. So in terms of the new metrics and stuff that your system captures and so forth, and as well as other platforms, do you think would you recommend companies to also add in, let's say, professional services or layer of manual validation, let's say, of the sentiment score, given the sophistication of the AI?
So we're measuring basically the sentiment of the LLM is providing, and that's what it's going to provide to the end user. Now, in terms of validation against the truth, maybe that's a little bit less applicable because these LLMs are actually going to be presenting this information to end users. And that actually is very, very important for marketers to understand. Does that make sense to you?
I think I need to process that. I think maybe just two different ways of looking at it. One is to how to manage the LLM's perspective that way versus the actual. So, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And with that, I think we're out of time. Mike and the
Oop, we can't hear you, Dennis.
Dan, something happened to your audio.
Here, I thought it was me.
No.
Okay, I think Dennis is trying to say goodbye and thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.